Good morning and welcome to SimWorld today. A full, heavy, not full, but a heavy college basketball show ahead. I am Marsh, joined by Rick Blaze. Good morning, Rick. How are you?
Peekaboo. I just put diamonds in my chain. Peekaboo. 80 points like a Kobe game. Never mind. You don't. We can move on.
Yep. Know the audience, Rick. Know the audience. Your audience right now has no idea what you're talking about. Speaking of no idea what you're talking about, the Tennessee troublemakers, the Vols continue to struggle, and apparently that has led to some frustration within the locker room, as was reported last night, that their sources saying that Trey Turner growing frustrated with the Volunteers after another loss. The Vols sitting currently at 9-11 after the latest defeat drops them to 1-3 in conference play. Rick, is it reasonable for Trey Turner to be this type of frustrated?
I mean, is it reasonable? Yes. Sure. He's going out there. He's playing pretty good. He's putting up 30 a lot of nights, so it's reasonable. But I mean, this is what it is. Again, everyone wants to harp back on what they did last year, but they haven't looked good since the big start of this season. You got Henry Vekic, who they thought was going to be the bona fide number 2 on the team, and he had 6 points last night. And overall this season, he's only been he hasn't been as advertised. I'll say that. So yeah, Trey Turner's frustrated. I'm sure he's frustrated. I understand his frustration. And I'm sure he's just biting at the chops and waiting on draft day to go ahead and get his name called in the SWBA. I don't know if they make the tournament at all. If they do, they're probably for sure a one and done. This is not one of those teams where it's like, oh, they can sneak up on you and they can just get high at the right time. No, Trey Turner can get high at the right time. The rest of the team is just lukewarm at best.
Well, I don't subscribe to the they can't win more than a couple because college basketball, especially hoopsteria, gives us evidence to the contrary. So I will never say never on that front. As sad as the frustration being valid, I think the frustration's valid, but this is clearly a basketball program that's got to do a better job of closing off their doors. I mean, this is not professional hoops where reporters should be having some inside sources on a college basketball player and his frustrations. This is not what you see in college basketball. If there's frustration, I think this program has done a really poor job of keeping the sanctity of the locker room. They have not kept the walls up appropriately for Trey Turner or otherwise to feel comfortable going to the media and supposedly saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a little frustrated by what's going on." Is the frustration valid? Sure, this is a basketball team that's underperformed. I think the loss of Dalton Connect is certainly one that hasn't been talked about quite a lot, but a lot of the offensive workload on top of the fact that Vekic has just not been an effective basketball player this season, has obviously fallen to Trey Turner. This is not something that you can really survive with. This is a really good SEC, which we're going to get to, or at least I'm going to in a second. You've got 4 teams that are ranked, 2 of them that are 1 and 2 and below 500 in conference play, and those 2 were at one point considered 2 of the top 10 teams in the country. This is a really good SEC conference, and Tennessee has played decently enough in non-conference play to get to where they are, but there's no real easy wins on the schedule. Georgia just proved they can win big. Maybe your easy quote-unquote wins is LSU and Missouri. You get those, it still doesn't make you a really great in-season basketball or in-conference basketball team. So Tennessee's got work to do. Is the frustration valid? Sure, but you'd like to see the energy built off that frustration aimed at,
So,
the
so
improvement internally.
you're saying Tennessee needs to stop volunteering information to the media.
I would say that is exactly what they need to do. Keep
Well, they're
keep the
volunteers.
locker room closed. Keep
They're
the locker
volunteers, Marsh, is
room
what they do.
closed.
They
It's
volunteer
not typically
victories.
what it is.
They volunteer
Speaking of volunteers
media
and good
inside.
conferences, let's move on to the next topic, which is the conference of most intrigue. Plenty of them have really ramped up. Some of them, as was announced last week, well, not some of them, all of them will be conference championship games that feature the top 2 teams and the top 2 teams only. One single conference championship game, which means the regular season suddenly means a heck of a lot more. So, Rick, what conference are you most looking forward to or keeping your eye on the closest as we head into the throngs of conference play?
I'm not going to go with the obvious low hanging fruit because I think there's a conference that people may not be thinking about, but I think that I can make a point that they're just as important, just competitive as any other conference, and that's the American Conference. You got Princeton, Memphis, SMU, and Davidson to round out the top four. Davidson is 12-8. If you look at all the conferences at 12-8, they'd be sitting pretty good in most of these conferences. I think this is a very competitive conference. I didn't have this on my bingo card for 2025 for sure. But here we are, Princeton at 16-4, a top 10 team. You can argue maybe they could be a little bit higher coming up next week, the next rankings. Memphis at 14-8, 11-9, very highly competitive between these four teams. And so I think the American Conference for me is an exciting conference to watch. I think it's going to come down to the last final few weeks before this whole thing gets cleared up. With Princeton obviously being a favorite right now.
That conference will remain interesting so long as Memphis doesn't pull away, right? So Memphis got a big win over Wichita State, who was 2-1 prior to their meeting. Princeton obviously undefeated. Memphis's only loss is to Princeton. So you've got to. It's an interesting conference. I don't disagree with you, and especially a lot of them are obviously at this point. But what Memphis does, and if they can get some distance and advantage up on SMU and Davidson and Temple and Houston and Wichita State, then there's certainly. If that does happen, if they start pulling away, that suddenly becomes a bit of a two-man race. To me, it's the Big East, and I'm not going SEC, but I think I'll make the case for the SEC. You've got 5 teams that are ranked. You've got 2 of them that are in the top 15, and they're both 1 and 2. That's of interest. But why am I saying the Big East? Because Villanova sits on top of it, and then all but 2 teams in the rest of the conference are 2 and 2. And so you've got every single team, quite literally, because VCU, Xavier, who probably aren't going to be real players in it, actually aren't that far out of it, sitting at 1 and 3, they are all in position 1 week removed from being the number 2 team in the conference. And you've got Butler, who gets the loss to Villanova earlier this week. St. John's has been struggling and inconsistent as of late. Georgetown's been up and down. UConn, the door suddenly wide open for UConn to make the conference championship game and have 1 shot to make it into Hoopsteria. Creighton, Marquette, Seton Hall, who had the deep run last season in the conference playoffs to upset UConn in the first round of the Big East Conference tournament. So there, to me, is where there's no clear idea of who's going to be there, right? In the American Conference, we know who's on top. In the ACC, there's some competitiveness, but we have a decent idea of who we assume to be on top. In the Big East, there's just really no real clear number 2 team, whether that's ranking-wise or conference standings-wise, which means every single game between now and I would say the next 6 weeks suddenly carries a ton of weight.
Well, you say tomato, I say tomato. I don't argue the Big East conference is super competitive, highly competitive from top to bottom. I think there is, I would say, there's a track record of a little bit more history of those teams, at least the top 4 teams being relevant in their conference. We don't have a track record at all of Princeton being top of their of their conference, no. Right? So you got something that's never been done before, and you want to see if they can hold on. Can Memphis take above? I think it's just like the unknowns for the American Conference is kind of like question mark. Oh, let's wait and see. With these other conferences, a lot of those big dog teams, you're like, well, we kind of know how this is going to shake out. More or less, right? Or at least we have a better idea of how it's going to shake out.
You would think so, but
Big East is a good option
in the Big East.
Well, I think the American is more of a. It leaves more. It's like a bigger cliffhanger because you have no idea. No one has. Well, any
Princeton
idea
finally makes the leap from the Ivy League to the Group of 5 conference, and suddenly now they're playing good basketball in the American. All right, let's head to the association where we are 1 day removed from, or 1 day away from the beginning of the All-Star break. So what better time to take a look and make some predictions? So Rick, Eastern Conference first, and then we'll do Western Conference. Okay. Make your selections for your 8 playoff teams. Start with the East.
All right, I have Cleveland. The top is not going to change really. Cleveland, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Pacers, the Bucks, and then The Pistons are 6. I got them holding on, but I think it's interesting there. I got the Heat moving up at 7. And you know what? I got the Hawks sneaking in at 8. I got the Magic not making it. I got the Magic falling at the end. I got them dropping out, and I got the Heat and Hawks coming up and grab those first 8 spots.
I would disagree on the last part. I think the Orlando Magic are going to hold on. I don't really trust Atlanta. They just traded away DeAndre Hunter. They've been playing terribly ever since Jalen Johnson went down. They are hyper reliant on Trae Young to get things done, and their offense just over the last month has not looked the same that it did early on in the season. And I think Orlando has not played necessarily more inspiring basketball than them, but to me, it's just got the pieces in place. I mean, they were one of the best top 4 teams in the conference out the gate before kind of injuries took over, and we're seeing how impactful Jalen Suggs is to the Magic group. So to me, it's the same top 7, but I would take Orlando over Atlanta and still Miami to be the second one. Chicago sitting there at 10. For the sake of good basketball, we do need to have it be Orlando-Miami matchup in the 7-8 and Atlanta-Chicago, just because I don't really need to get 2 chances to see, or for Atlanta and or Chicago to get in. I just, for a play-in tournament, I do not need that.
The Bulls not making it. The Bulls team is
they're not, but here they sit there, and I don't believe in the Sixers. Their Sixers are 20 and 34.
Oh, no, the Sixers don't believe in the Sixers.
And they've lost 5 in a row, and their fans are now booing the man that they defended with all things that they possibly could. All right, let's head to the Western Conference. Your 8 teams in the Western Conference. And if you want to go the easy way and say the top 6 currently are my top 6, that's perfectly fine, but your 8 teams that are making it.
All right, so I'll say the top. I mean, I think the 8 stands pat. Thunder, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Rockets, Lakers, Clippers, Timberwolves, Mavs. I think that's it. I think that's the list. I don't think the Kings get in. I think the Mavs have a well. It depends on what AD situation. That's crazy. If the Mavs are now depending on AD situation to see if they're going to hold on. It depends on AD situation. If he comes back anytime before Christ comes back, then the Mavs can hold on to the 8 spot. If not, the Warriors and Kings have a shot. I give the Warriors the edge to get the 8 spot because of their track record and because of the veterans on the team. But if AD comes back anytime before Christ returns, I got the Mavs holding on to the 8 spot, and then the Kings and the Section 8 Warriors on the outside looking in.
I think Golden State ends up getting by Dallas.
Of course,
they gave one away last night. With the injuries to Dallas, particularly Anthony Davis. They needed 42 points and an awesome performance last night from Kyrie Irving to get the win by 4. The Warriors did not play great in that one. They shot 29%, I think, from deep. Meanwhile, Dallas shot 42% from deep, and again, Kyrie. There was a peak Kyrie game, and to me, my concern with Dallas is if I'm picking them to make it, because I think it's more so a lack of belief in Dallas than it is in Golden State, because I do not believe in the Sacramento Kings, despite the fact that they've won 3 in a row, is that I need to rely on Anthony Davis to come back and stay healthy. And I need to rely on Kyrie Irving, who now has to go to the All-Star game, which, by the way, I don't think is actually a great thing for Kyrie, because he's been playing through a bulging disc and continues to play 40-plus minutes per night. I don't think that's a good thing for a guy that does not have the most glowing injury history in the last couple seasons. So I have to expect him to stay healthy as well for the rest of the season. Those are 2 big gambles from a health perspective that I'm not willing to take. Now, if we had AD and we had Kyrie Irving and we turned the injury sliders off and we said this is what we're going with, I think Dallas would make this group. I just can't sit here and trust with a pick that Dallas is going to stay healthy for the rest of the season. Can it happen? It could happen. Will it happen? Maybe. I just do not believe in it enough to say, yep, I feel confident enough to make a stake that Dallas is getting in. And Minnesota is still surprising that they haven't figured it out. Phoenix, I don't think, has any real conversation to be getting in. They have not been a good basketball team. I still think they should have found a way to try to get rid of Kevin Durant at the trade deadline.
I think they're going to blow it up this summer. I think
you have to make a change this summer, because you can't the Bradley Beal deal was just idiotic to to go become captives of Bradley Beal's no trade clause, but they're going to try like hell to hang on to Devin Booker. We'll see if they end up being successful with that, but Kevin Durant's got to go, not because he needs to go, but because his team cannot continue to operate as it is. All right, that's our show. Reminder, we got more college hoops rolling through tonight on Thursday the 13th. Another triple header for you on ESPN. This one starts with Rutgers, Maryland, Oklahoma State and Texas Tech at the 8 p.m. game, and then Arizona, California, Pac-12 action under the bright lights at 9:30 p.m.
I need to pick one, Marsh. I picked one yesterday, and I was absolutely correct with UNLV. That's just what I do. I'm casually going 75% on my wins this year in the SWU game. I'm just casually going about my business.
Okay, Sir 75. Let's see. You got 3 shots at it. Who you got? Rutgers, Maryland, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Arizona, Cal.
You want me to pick one or all 3?
All 3?
75%. This is easy work for me.
All right, let's hear it.
I got Maryland first game. Tell me the second game again.
Oklahoma State, Texas Tech.
Give me Tech, Red Raiders.
Okay.
And then the last game
Arizona,
is Cal.
Arizona, Cal.
Is Zona at home or Zona away?
In Berkeley.
I think Zona's a better away team than home team. I'm gonna go with the Wildcats.
All right, there you go. Sir 75 says all home teams: Maryland, Texas Tech, and actually on a road team, Arizona on the road here on Thursday. All right, that's all on ESPN. Again, that starts at 6:30. We're back here tomorrow morning. Recap some of that and the final day of the first half of the SWBA season before the All-Star break. We're back on Friday on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.
Yes, sir.
This has been a presentation of SimWorld.